Hi, my name is Arijus Johnson. This is my senior project. So for my essential question, it was what is the effect of halftime on the flexibility of athletes? And more, just to give you a preview on this project, we're going to start out talking about the inspiration, following along with the process, moving on to the challenges kind of I faced during it, and ultimately the rewards I kind of found doing it. So for the inspiration of my project, I'll show the video clip in a second. I started off this project kind of in June. We had this team, we had to kind of plan an original project. I was going to do a sleep study, which is not anything but close to what this was. I was trying to do that. I was reaching out to all these different people, trying to find different data I could use, people's like technology I could use. Nothing worked. So I immediately kind of got shut down, and then immediately I was kind of moving on to a new project in July, kind of scouring, trying to find something else I could be interested in. So instead I kind of started looking into athletics, muscles, kind of like the human body, and I've kind of, by chance, I stumbled across this 5-minute TED Talk. I was going to show a 10-second snippet of it if I can get it. That's really small.
Muscle fibers are comprised of millions of his improved range of motion to stretching decreases with each 30-second stretch, allowing our athlete to continually elongate his hamstring. And this improved flexibility likely decreases the chance of incurring certain muscle injuries. But due to muscles' elastic properties, this effect will be gone in just 10 minutes without...
So pretty much just that 20 seconds of this video inspired my entire project. I thought 10 minutes seems like a really short time for flexibility to kind of just decrease, and I realized that's about the exact time all high school athletics half times are. So I decided to start trying to look into that, see what that would be. So this video kind of inspired my entire project. So for my mentor for my project, his name was Kyle Martinez. He is a partner at Personal Best in Norfolk. Me and Kyle already had a really good relationship before this. He was my physical therapist probably for about 4 years before this project even got started. So kind of when it came time to finding a mentor for this project, I knew he was kind of a sure thing. He is a doctor of physical therapy and a certified strength and conditioning specialist. So I figured he was a no-brainer to ask. So I kind of broke this down into 3 parts, kind of 3 seasons of this project. The first one was the fall. My original plan for this was to start with girls soccer, just figured it would be the easiest one for me to get to. Unfortunately, I always had a conflict with work. The games were always immediately right after school on Tuesdays and Fridays, and I always had work immediately after school Tuesdays and Fridays. So it was kind of just impossible for me to get to those. So instead, I redirected my entire project during the fall season and focused on trying to set it up to be the best it could be during the winter. So one of the first 2 people I reached out to was Mr. Ardicki and Paul Adams. I'm going to start talking about Paul Adams first. He is kind of the head coach of the varsity basketball team and kind of the director of the entire Millis boys basketball program. So it was pretty much essential for me to be able to reach out to him and make sure I could actually use his team to set up my project, since I wouldn't be able to use the girls' team since, of course, I'd be playing. So right there is a picture of me reaching out, just double checking with him. I already talked to him previously in person, but I just wanted to reassure that we are all set to go when the winter came. The second person I reached out was Mr. Ardicki. Since he's in charge of all the students, I wanted to make sure it was okay that I was using the students to create a study. So me and him worked to create a waiver. I'll show that picture here, and I have a physical copy if anybody actually wants to see it. So we created a waiver just to make sure all the kids were comfortable participating and felt there was no kind of liability issues for the school. Finally, I developed a procedure and data tables on my own with help with Ms. Copese and Ms. Boise. Really, the procedure was pretty simple. I realized I had a very short window to actually get the data, so I just kind of had the kids touch their toes, measure the distance after they warmed up and after the halftime, and that was all I did. And I recorded that and the length of halftime and kind of compiled that all later on. Here's me reaching out to Mr. Ardicki and all that. There's the waiver I made. If anybody wants to see a physical copy of that, I have that with me. So during this process, especially in the fall, I was doing a lot of research on this with the research reports. So I figured if I was going to looking into the muscles and how flexibility affects things, I might as well really understand how they all work. So first thing I really did was the 3 different types of muscles, looking into cardiac muscle, skeletal muscle, and smooth muscle. Of course, cardiac muscle and smooth muscle weren't really important in this project, since cardiac muscle is only found in your heart, and smooth muscle is pretty much entirely in your digestive tract. So I was really focusing on just on skeletal muscle, because that's just attached to your bones and what you're using during athletics. Then I also looked into 2 different types of stretching, which is dynamic and static stretching. Pretty much all you see kids do during basketball games or any sort of activity is dynamic stretching, ignoring kind of slowly warming up with static stretching beforehand and getting it that way, doing it the right way. And then finally, muscle injury. I figured since kids are always getting hurt, and it seems to be mostly muscle injury, you don't see kids breaking bones too often. I wanted to figure out why that was happening, especially since I'm looking into that, and that seems to be mostly because of a lack of flexibility. The muscles are overexerted, which causes kind of an issue when things get pulled, things get hurt, things get torn. So here we finally get into the actual data gathering portion of the season. This is my winter section. I began gathering data in early December with the first games coming around. Here's me doing it with one of the kids over there, ruler, having him touch his toes, and kind of me creeping in the corner. That's where I'd hide every game for all 10 games I did. I'd sit there with my notebook, watch the kids play, see which kids were playing the most, just kind of advice I was given later on is to kind of compile the kids into groups, because some kids played a lot more than other kids. Some kids would play some, and kids would play the entire game, and that kind of has an effect on how much halftime would affect them. So that one I would ultimately compile a graph based off this data, which would be here on the right. As you can see, the kids, I marked them as Z, X, and Y. Y were the kids that played a lot. X were the kids that didn't really play at all. That's why especially them, their halftime flexibility increased a ton, and then Z where they played a ton as well. Here's how I'd record everything in my notebook. I would have a before and after. Usually just have somebody record it with me. Me and Eli would typically go do this, be pretty quick and easy. So that's just 4 games I did. And then moving on to the spring. I finished gathering the winter data, and I kind of assumed my project was done. That was the original plan for this project, was just kind of wrap it up after the winter, because it's supposed to really just be focused on basketball. But the STEAM advisor suggested, nope, let's do a little bit more. Let's kind of push the project a little bit further, do a little bit more with it. So they advised me to collect one more set of data. I wasn't really sure how I was going to do this, since the spring sports are a little weird. They don't really have half times anymore. It's pretty much just baseball, volleyball, and track. And those don't really have like a set halftime or a break. So I kind of was stuck on what to do. I was almost going to use Tripsickery, because they sit for a lot, but I really didn't want to do that. So I ended up using my gym class, since Mr. Fallon usually at the end of the period gives us about 10 minutes to go change and get ready, and that's about halftime length. And I would just kind of get kids as they're coming outside. Here's just me doing it with a couple of my friends outside as we were wrapping up gym class. Here's another graph. I would break this one up into male and female, looking into that kind of difference between them. Especially the males would have a bigger difference typically. It's just because of kind of the activities, but since we have pretty much a free reign to do whatever we want in gym class, the boys typically were just kind of playing basketball, more running, sweating a little bit more, at least my class. And the girls were a lot more just dance. And you kind of just got to stand there for that. So they didn't really have much of a difference, as they never really warmed up anyway. For the vision of the graduate, I think I pretty much covered all bases with communication, collaboration, critical thinking, and character. Communication, I was kind of reaching out to all sorts of people trying to pull this project together, my mentor, the STEAM advisors, all of them, emails, just kind of reaching out to everybody, collaborating, just bringing kind of people together to like help me out. The project needed a lot of people to kind of help inspire me and move me in the right direction, because there's a lot of roadblocks to this, and kind of creating your own study on your own, you need a little bit of help. Critical thinking, like I mentioned, I was completely lost with the gym thing. I didn't think that was even going to be a plan, but it kind of just ended up being my own thing. And the character, the reason I made the waiver or had that form is just make sure the kids were comfortable and their parents were comfortable. I just want to make sure everybody felt safe in this environment, in this study, and nobody felt like they were being forced to do anything. For my successes of this project, I thought the results were pretty cool. Usually I did see that they had a difference. It wasn't as much as maybe I thought it would be, but I also just didn't have a lot of time to look into it. Time management, I thought I was kind of done. Everything had to be kind of done within its period of time. If I missed games, I would lose data. If I missed gym classes, I'd miss data, and it just wouldn't kind of come together the way I'd want it to. So I really had to be on it, and I thought I was. And I thought it was kind of awesome that I created and organized my entire research project on my own. I didn't think that would be something I'd do until much later on in life, or if ever. And it's just something I did my senior year of high school. For failures, lack of photos. I had a couple, but they were kind of just scraped together right at the end, and they weren't really that great. I wish I had more of videos of the kids actually doing it, kind of going through it. I was kind of banking on the games are usually live streamed, but of course the freshman games are always broken. So those never really got shown, so I didn't really have those. I never really got a fall season. That was a big part. I thought if I could have all year, it would have really tied the project up nicely. So that's kind of that. And better use of the summer. Maybe just if I could have kind of planned ahead with work and thinking about how that would have worked together, it would have just kind of pulled the project together nicely. If I had more time, like I said, I'd use the fall season. I'd use both girl and boy sports. I think you want to be able to pull both genders into a project. You can't just be focusing on one, then you're just going to have a gap with the other. You can't prove that it happened for both. And I think that would have been a really nice way to bring this whole thing together. And finally, I would like to really develop something to be done during halftime. That would be the next step for this if anybody actually took it on next year or wanted to continue the research. Would just see if they made their own little procedure to do during the halftime break, talk to the coaches, do maybe a quick 2 or 3 minute thing, Since I feel like kids typically just come out at halftime flat, they don't do very well. I think everybody's seen the coaches yell at you saying like, oh, you're terrible coming out at half. Worst third quarter ever, that's usually kind of the biggest problem. So I think if somebody could do that, that'd be really cool. I'd like to give a thank you to Ms. Copice, Ms. Boise, Ms. Philibrown, Mr. Ardicki, Kyle, and Paul Adams.